And welcome to the Kubernetes series that we have started on YouTube, which is on Kubernetes, like we have discussed in the previous session, like about the namespaces, deployments, right? And then we have discussed about a type of deployment, say for example, replication controllers, replica set, and the deployment. Okay, these all were the controllers in Kubernetes. Then we have discussed about the services, right? Where we have discussed cluster IP, node port, and then we have also discussed about load balancer, right? And theoretically, we have discussed about external name service. So in today's session, I'm going to discuss about external name service in detail, and mostly we will doing the demo as well as we understand the architecture as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so before I will go on the hands-on, what I will do is I will show you this architecture diagram what we have created here. So if you remember last time what we have discussed here. So let me little bit zoom out, right? So those who have seen my previous video, we have already discussed about cluster IP service, right? We have discussed about node port. So this was cluster IP service, if you remember, right? If this is cluster IP service where we were sending the request inside the cluster and to the pods, right? And then we discussed about the node port. Again, here also the users were able to send the request to the pods inside the cluster, right? In these two inside the cluster. Third one, again we have discussed about the load balancer, where again users were able to send the request inside the cluster to multiple nodes or ports, right? So these all diagrams we have understand. Now let us assume, or let's take a scenario where you need to, okay, I mean the pods or your services or your application which is running inside the cluster that needs to communicate external to any IP service, DB, or any API, right? So in that case what you have to do is you have to look for an option called external name service. Okay, so if you see this external name service, okay, so first let's go the definition wise also. So those who wanted to look for the definition, it is a very simple definition I have written. So this is used when your pods or your application needs to talk to external service. Okay, external service could be like your API, okay, external API, database or DB or websites. Okay, so here what we do is we do not hard code any IP address. Rather, what we do is we make it DNS friendly. Okay, so this is very important here. What we do is we make it DNS friendly and we make it more secure basically. Okay, so when we move towards the CNAME A record, right? So then it became more secure as well, right? In compared to when we expose the IP addresses. Okay, so that is the benefit here. But in actual, or in summary, in short, what I have to tell is if your pods or your application have to send or connect to any external IP service, okay, API service, DB or websites, then you will use external name service. Okay, so we will discuss in detail like why and when we have to use these things. Okay, so what I have written here is I have created one YAML file basically. Okay, so if I show you my YAML file, so this is nothing but, okay, 3 pods I have deployed, and this is my external name service. Okay, kind is service, API version is v1. Okay, and now what we are doing is here, this is the name of my service, Australia external name service. Okay, and the type is external name, right? And where, what external name I'm pointing to here. Okay, in actual basically, what when I'm saying actual, it means in production or when you will work in the project site, you will not be using google.com. Rather, you will be using any of the API DB links or website links to connect it. Okay, so that details you have to share here. But for the demo purpose, I'm not creating any resource in Azure or AWS or GCP. Rather, I will use any domain name basically here like google.com, bing.com, or anything. Okay, for my demo purpose, right? So this is my external name service. This is the small syntax basically you have to remember, and then we can start deploying it. Okay, so what will happen here is if you take this picture, so what will happen is, so when the request it will come to the external lib service, it will go to the google.com. Okay, you have to just send a request to this particular service name, and it will, what it will do is it will resolve that, basically whatever traffic will come, and it will send it to your google.com, that is cname record or cname DNS record. If you here you will mention, right, google.com, and it will route the service or route the traffic to this particular link, right? So traffic goes directly from the pod to google.com, bypassing the Kubernetes network stack, right? One more thing we have to understand here is, when we create the external name service, right, then in that case there is no uh, what I'll say, no traffic proxy is there. There is no load balancer is there. There is no cluster IP service. So nothing will be there, right? It will be just purely an external name service, which will only takes your DNS name, and it will just route the traffic based on the DNS name only. Okay, so that is the benefit of having this in that is the benefit of using external name service, right? So I hope you have understood here. So whenever we have to connect from inside to outside, we will use the external name service, right? So why we use it? Okay, in you might be thinking like, okay, why we have to use this external name service, right? So you suppose, or you take that example that, okay, your customer does not want it to migrate a certain database or certain links to any other resource. Okay, they wanted to uh, keep it keep it at the same way where it is, right? And they don't want it to migrate it to Kubernetes, right? In that case, what you should do is you should definitely recommend external name service to connect your application. Okay, and what else is there? Like, say for example, your pods config files are there, right? If you do not wanted to hard code those APIs in the pod config file, then you should definitely explore for the external name service, right? And what else we can discuss before we go to this demo? Mm, So I think we are covering most of the things. Okay, but only thing we have to understand here is, when we create an external name service, there is no load balancer, no port mapping. Only purely it will be a DNS name based uh, base filtering, or network will go based on the DNS name, right? Okay, so let's get started. We will quickly go to the demo as well, right? So I will open my um, command prompt, and I will apply the file kubectl ctl apply -f. This was my file name. Okay, so I have applied my file, and you can see, right? Let's see first kubectl get all. Okay, so let's see how many resources or applications are present. So three pods, right? We have declared in our deployment file that it should be there. This is the external name service which we have declared, and you see it is pointing to an external IP, and that thing it is mentioned here is it is routing to google.com, right? And we will see as well this example. This is the deployment what we have created, and deployment will create this replica set, right? So these all things we have already understood what is all this. So you must go and watch my previous video on replica set, replication controller, and deployments. So that will clarify all the doubts on our concept here. Okay, but you might be thinking here, what is this service or cluster IP, right? So, but I did not created this. Why? What is this? Okay, so before I apply, I wanted to delete it again so that I can show. Okay, so I will delete the file. So if you are thinking that, okay, my deployment file have deployed this cluster IP service, then that's not the case, because This is the Kubernetes cluster IP service. Okay, so whenever this even if you will delete it, right, it will again come back in the same situation or in the same form, because this is used by the API. Our we have, right, in our master node. So API service will be using this particular cluster IP service. This is not for us. Okay, so you do not have to think about this one. So now let's see if it should be deleted by now, but still you see it is present. Okay, now if I delete this one, kubectl delete, and I'll paste the service name. So it got deleted, right? But if you still see, it will get no resource found, right? But it will still get created whenever I will see, it got created automatically, right? So we do not have a control on this one, so you can skip and you do not have to get confused with the statement which I shared in the earlier when we were discussing the architecture diagram. External say name service, when we deploy, it only deploys the external name service, no other services. In the previous example we have discussed, when we were deploying the load balancer service, it was deploying node port, and node port was inherently taking care of cluster IP service, right? Similarly, previous one, when we were deploying the node port, it was deploying the cluster IP service, right? But in this case, whenever we will deploy the external name service, only external name service will be deployed. No load balancer, no node port, nothing, no cluster IP service. Okay, and this one is a Kubernetes cluster IP service. Okay, so I hope this is at least that should be clear. Okay, we should not get confused with this statement. Now what I will do is I will apply the file again and I will create my pods. Okay, so get all, let it get created. So it should be in creating state. Okay, let it get created. It will take a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'll just check it again. Okay, so now pods are running. Everything is running, right? So now in this condition, basically, if you see this architecture diagram, what I will do just to explain you is, because there is no, I am outside, right? I am present here. Okay, this is my location outside the cluster, and first I need to create a pod. What I will do is I will create a pod inside this one, and I cannot directly reach out to these pods, right? I cannot reach out directly pods, because first I need to either create a cluster IP service. In the previous example, or when you have learned about the cluster IP service, right? You must have seen that first from the user or my location, what I will do is I will log into any pod, and from the pod I will just curl or send the location to cluster IP service. Cluster IP service will take care of the request of routing these two pods. Okay, but currently what my requirement is, I have to create one pod. Okay, so this is my, let's say, my client. So this is my client or pod. Okay, I will create this pod, and from this pod I will send a request to, because this is an application, right? I cannot do, or I cannot do anything on these pods. So what I will do is I will create my own pod. You consider that, okay, the request is whatever I will do from here. You consider everything I'm doing from, everything is getting done from here, point number, I mean pod number 1, 2 or 3. Okay, just for an example, I am creating one pod here. Okay, you can say like this. Okay, so what I will do is I will send a request from this pod to my client, my laptop to my this pod. I will send the request inside the cluster, and then from this, what I will do is I will send a request to external name service. You assume like this is getting happen. Okay, I'll send the request here, and then we will see that the request should, when I'm sending the request here, it should take me to the google.com. Okay, So that is the thing what we are going to see in the demo now. Okay, so let's create one. Okay, and what I'll do, I'll clear it, and let's create first one pod, right? kubectl, right? And then what I will do is kubectl, then run. This is my client name, right? I discussed the same what I have mentioned here. It is my client. Okay, so I will keep the same name here. kubectl run my client, and then let's mention the image as nginx. Okay, so it will create a pod. Now if we will see all the services, there should be one pod here also. Okay, it is in creating state. It will take couple of seconds, and then it will create a pod for me, right? Should be created by now. It is running. Okay, what I will do is, again, then I will kubectl then exec -it. Okay, I wanted to log into my client. Okay, hyphen win sh. Okay, then when I will send the request, what I'm doing is I'm trying from my laptop, I'm trying to send the request. I wanted to log into my client pod, and I'm able to log in, right? Here you see now I'm inside the pod. So this statement is completed. This this task is completed. I have sent my request. Okay, now I am inside this pod. Okay, so from here, what I will do is I will send the request to this particular external name service, right? So let's do this part also. What we will do is we will send this request inside the cluster external name service. So I will do is curl, okay, and then I will take the, okay, before I should have done this curl, I should know the cluster IP or the name service, but I think we can take it from the, so this should be my name of my service, right? So I will send the request to my service. Let's see what will happen. So I have sent the request to my service, Australia external name service. Okay, so so what we see here is we have sent the request and it is going to google.com, right? So this is what we wanted to achieve. The request is going to google.com, right? This is fantastic. Okay, so I am inside the cluster. I'm inside the cluster. I'm inside the pod, and you assume that this pod is nothing but pod number 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, and the application, what it is trying to do is, currently whatever I am doing, you assume that application is trying to do, and application is sending a request to external name service. Okay, that's what I did, and then it officially, I mean, it is sending a request to google.com, right? So that is in turn sending a request to google.com. That's what we have seen here. Okay, so what I will do is I will exit it, and couple of commands. Let's see here. Okay, so we have done the exit, and let's see here, kubectl get svc. Okay, so now you can see this is the service I was sending the request, which in turn sending it to google.com, right? So this completes our external name service as well. So previously we have discussed cluster IP service, node port, load balancer, and this is the another one which we have completed today, which is on names, external name service, right? So I hope you have understood it, what we are trying to do and why we are trying to do is, okay, and this should be useful if your customer does not wanted to migrate inside the or towards the Kubernetes, and he wanted to keep his service outside right? So you can use in that all cases. Okay, so I will pause this video now and we will meet in the next video whenever we will create on another service. Okay, so that should be on cluster IP we have covered, external name just now we have covered, headless, right? So we will discuss in detail about the headless. So for now, I don't want this video to be so long, so I will just pause it and we'll meet in the next video then. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great day and happy learning. Kindly subscribe so that we will grow together.